other civilization has invented clothing. The gray dudes who come and abduct us and probe us and make crop circles, who were here during the 90s and the 50s that we autopsied, hadn't invented clothes. All right, welcome to the Dinner and Geek Podcast, the only podcast with Mr. Lemon and Mr. Croshaw where we talk about stuff pretending like we know what we're talking about and pretend to be on topic and just go somewhere. Today's topic is this book that I lost the cover of, Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, the guy who wrote The Martian.
Yeah, that's how he's known.
And for dinner with the geek is pasta carbonara, because this thing's about it's about carbon. And with sun-dried tomatoes, because the sun is involved, we've got some Soylent as our coma shake, and as his favorite food in the thing is a peanut butter tortilla for dessert.
Yep.
All right. So, Mr. Croshaw, what do you want to talk about?
Well, I think that the biggest topic is astrobiology.
Okay.
The study of life out in the stars. And obviously it's all theoretical, or rather hypothetical at this point, right? We don't have a lot of information about it. But the way that Andy Weir really gives us a believable view of astrobiology is really refreshing in the science fiction realm, because a lot of astrobiology is just like humanoids, right? It's just little green men, big eyes, big heads. It's refreshing to have something different.
Yeah, so if you've read the book, or if you haven't read the book.
Spoilers.
We're not going to ruin this plot so much, but we will really learn a few things. So the story is basically the Earth is dying. There's this astrobacteria, I guess is what I'll call it, plankton, astroplankton, single-celled organisms, and that they call astrophage, and it is eating up and blocking light from the sun, which is causing climate change.
Bad climate change.
Super bad climate change.
In the opposite direction.
Like 10, 15 degrees Celsius climate change, worse than the last ice age climate change. Kill everything on the planet. Well, kill most of the things on the planet. Climate change. Yeah.
And also, by the way, I know that this is breaking the rules. Never drink out of glassware. But I have cleaned these in the correct way, so we're good. But yeah, I think the astrophage...
Oh man, that's actually pretty good.
Yeah, it's not bad.
It's not bad at all.
I gave you the vanilla flavor. I've got the banana flavor.
I think
the aftertaste is weird. At least for me.
I'm not a big fan of like artificial banana.
Oh really?
So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, it does kind of make me a little bit depressed because the flavor of banana is based on a now extinct subspecies of banana. Anyway,
we've got to go like having a banana. That's going to go extinct.
Yeah.
If you want a really good time, go find weird bananas and eat them. I'll tell you, they don't taste like bananas like you think they should, and it blows your mind. Some taste like strawberries. This is us getting on top.
Yeah, exactly.
But there are bananas out there that when you eat them, they've got like a strawberry back taste, and they kind of taste like eating a strawberry banana ice cream.
There's also food that tastes like bananas but isn't bananas.
Yeah.
Like jackfruit.
Jackfruit is awesome.
It's like super overripe, slimy banana. Anyway, but with the astrophage, the idea of obviously photosynthesis is a thing, right?
Right.
But they do it in a completely different way. They store heat energy in the form of neutrinos, which is nuts.
Yeah.
And then they convert their mass directly into energy to propel themselves.
Which works. I did some of the math for how that would work based off of some easier equations that I found. And like, I think it was, what was it like a 300 megawatt laser or something to propel 1 kilogram of stuff at 1 meter per second. I think is what it came up with. So yeah, like for a teeny tiny thing like a plankton, but a giant ship, you got to have
so much.
Oh my gosh,
it's crazy. But the thing is, what's crazy is photons. They don't have mass.
Yeah.
But they do have momentum, and so it seems like it breaks Newton's laws when you send light out in one direction and then you go the other direction, because you think that we have to send mass backward.
Yeah.
But if we transfer momentum, then that still works. That we still are following.
It's a transfer of
the
energy,
laws,
if
yeah.
I understand correctly. Yeah.
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 So the astrophage propulsion is fascinating, and and of course the idea of the astrophage and life on Earth and the life of Rocky's planet are all connected. They all
have
related.
DNA.
Right.
They all have the same basic cellular components.
Yeah, and the idea is that we may not even know none of those three, planets. Maybe the planet of origin. It might be a completely different planet of origin, but that somehow the astrophage evolved in one place, humans and our biosphere evolved here, and then Rocky and his species evolved on a different planet from just a different panspermia event. It's just so cool, the idea that all life on Earth is related, all life maybe in the cosmos might be related, just by the nature of how things are exchanged, mass and information. It's really cool.
Yeah. So they fly out. They find out that Tau Centauri, which is 11.6 light years away, is like all the stars around around us have been dimming, and so they theoretically have astrophage around them too, which is kind of like it's like intergalactic locusts a little bit in that idea that they go and they eat everything up, and there's no natural predators for them where they go. And so what happens when a species goes into a place that they're adapted for, or they are well adapted to, that's a better way to put it, but don't have a natural predator, they take it over. It's like in the South, Burmese pythons are freaking everywhere.
Well, there's invasive species. I mean, we're the cause, right? We carry everything on ships and planes.
Frogs in Australia.
Yeah, snakes in Southeast Asia.
Snakes in Hawaii.
Yeah.
There used to be snakes in Hawaii. Now there's snakes in Hawaii.
So it's a bad time. So these invasive species, they just go crazy. They infect all these stars, which isn't a problem until they get to us. And this climate change event, and then this character, the main character, Ryland Grace, has to go on this mission to figure out what's going on, right? And I love the little, I don't know, this has to be intentional, right? Hail Mary, full of grace.
Absolutely. Like that. When you as a writer, generally when you make a name, there's something behind it, and sometimes it's just because you want to entertain yourself, and sometimes it's because you want their name to have an extra thing. But
Ryland Grace.
The syllables even match up. Hail Mary, Ryland Grace.
Yep.
Adds up with syllabically, and even with the stresses, with Hail Mary, full of grace.
Yeah.
It's the same iambic structure.
I love that little thing, but the idea that they've got to figure out what's going on, and they've got only a certain amount of time. And to be completely honest, I think that the least believable part of this book is the international cooperation.
Oh my gosh.
We look at an existential crisis like climate change in the real world, and we can't get our crap together.
We can't get 12 people agreed on it.
Right. And so,
let alone the entire world to work together to create a project where we use space bacteria to propel via laser farts a hundreds of thousands of kilogram object near to the speed of light to a to a star like almost 12 light years away. So, yeah.
Well,
But the book's got to happen.
Yeah, I do like that they kind of address that with almost the authoritarian style government that takes the Project Hail Mary becomes like
it's one person in charge and what she says goes.
Yeah, and it is almost like the New World Order people's like worst nightmare, right? This is the New World Order. Project Hail Mary completely takes over the world. Solar farms in Africa.
Oh my gosh, that's an entire podcast by itself.
Building these huge, building everything in orbit, and then in the South China Sea, what they're doing, and then the whole part of detonating nuclear weapons in the ice shelves of Antarctica.
I didn't think about that. But when they got there, I was like, oh, they're releasing the methane, and I don't know why I didn't even think about doing that. My first thought in the book was I thought they were going to go into, because there's a large amount of methane stores in the ocean floor too.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Especially like in the Mediterranean, I think so. Off topic, there's a theory out there that one of the reasons the Bermuda Triangle exists, although statistically it doesn't, but the Bermuda Triangle exists, is because there are methane emissions that come out at a large amount about right there. And the idea is somehow that messes with people with like flight. It doesn't make any sense to me, but maybe it does.
Yeah, and I think that was a genius move on Weir's part to say, hey, like, there is something that we could do to kind of give us more time. And
because I did the math at the point, and they're like they've got 30 years until climate change destroys it. 12 light years for him to get there. A few years to build the stupid thing, and 12 to 14 years for things to get there and back. So that's their 30 plus years. I worried for half the book how they were going to make that time frame work out. I was like, there's got to be something. But
yeah. Well, I didn't
even think of that one.
Yeah, they do mention in the book that it's going to be really tight, and obviously we don't get the payoff, or rather not the payoff, but kind of the brutal reality of what is going on on Earth and what they're having to go through. Because
we're complaining right now because I can't find like dream trays.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are spoiled creatures, and it's nice because being spoiled is awesome. But we are spoiled creatures, and I don't know how we deal if super crap hit the fan, like beyond what we could even imagine. It'd be how bad that.
Yeah, the socioeconomic situation would be crazy, but obviously Weir didn't want to deal with that, so we just got Ryland's point of view. What did you think about the format of like the flashbacks?
I thought it was brilliant. So stylistically, what's cool is he separates them out into past tense and future tense, and so that already sets up like the field for it when he's doing that.
Right.
But there is a ton of exposition that needs to happen in that story. Hello, person.
Students saying hi.
Hi, students. There's a ton of exposition in the story.
Oh, Parker needs to get in. It's not a student, it's Parker.
All right. Jump cut. All right. Stylistically. So exposition in literature is a giant problem because it's boring. This is why The Lord of the Rings starts with a giant action scene while it's explaining 10 million years of Middle Earth history. It's kind of why you have theme songs and a lot of television shows in the opening credits. You kind of have the "here's what the story is" song, and so there's so much exposition you've got to have in order for you to be able to understand what's going on.
Right.
And if you could tell this from it starts here and then he ends up here, but with the two happening at the same, it makes it so this part that's kind of getting us to where we want to be isn't boring exposition we have to go through for half the book in order to get to the interesting part.
Yeah.
It's us going, how are we there? We've got a mystery to solve.
Mm-hmm.
And humans
How did we get
love mystery. Why is this guy alone in a spaceship 12 light years from Earth? How did he get here?
Yeah.
Why doesn't he remember anything?
Yeah.
What the heck? And then you start learning things, and it makes that a fun process as opposed to, I'm bored, please get through with this so I can get to the dang point.
Right, and the exposition of this is how we got here, being related to whatever is happening in the story in the present tense, right? That his memories are triggered by certain things, and that I think that's a big part of it. Of that we are learning along with the main character.
And in a story, we act as the character is vicariously us.
Yes.
In your brain, you've got what are called mirror neurons, and they float around in your limbic system mostly by your hippocampus. And what they do is they mimic events when they happen to other people. The basis of empathy.
Yes, empathy. Yeah.
And so when if I'm watching LeBron James play basketball or something like that, and
you think I could do that?
Well, part of my brain literally thinks I am LeBron James, or whoever it is that I want to watch play basketball. And when I see my team win, that's why I get excited, because part of me literally thinks that I am this person. I am doing this thing. I'm playing we the team,
right.
As in I am part of this. I was an integral part of this as I sat on my couch and ate pizza.
Yeah.
And we do the same thing when we read a book. When we read Harry Potter, because not everybody, most people read Harry Potter, we think we're Harry. And so when Dolores Umbridge is the worst human being in the world, and she's being horrible to us, we hate her so much that we will be happy when the worst things in the world happen to her later because we think it's us. And so part of us thinks that we are Ryland Grace on a spaceship 12 light years away. Mm-hmm. And so it's a really naturalistic thing because we do the same thing. You ever stand up and go to the kitchen and you get to the kitchen and you're like, I have no idea why I'm here. I literally got up 30 seconds ago. Or you get to the bathroom, you're like, I'm still not sure how I got here. Yeah. And then you walk back and then you remember. You retrace your steps. Memory triggers work that same way. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so it feels like a natural thing to do as opposed to a storytelling gimmick. And it's both. Mm-hmm. But from a storytelling perspective, it's really cool. Anyway, I think we got to the point we were trying to get to yet, which is the cool biology of Rocky.
Yes. Well, I mean, the pentapod.
Okay. So exposition. Our main character gets the star, and there's another ship there, and it looks freaking weird.
Huge.
It's got flat sides. It looks like a decahedron or something.
Work.
It should not work at all. It's super wrong. It's like the creatures that made it couldn't see it.
Which they couldn't.
Which,
spoilers.
Although, that's not too much of a spoiler. That's the middle of the booker.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it's weird, and they communicate, and by mimicking each other, and eventually he meets and sees this other thing, and he describes it as a big-ass space rock spider. Imagine, and so it's got 5 legs. It's got an octahedron-y dilly in the middle. Yeah. With, that's all bumpy, and then it's got 5 legs. Each one has a 3-clawed or 3-fingered hand, which is also pretty dang smart. That's the minimum amount you need to grab things effectively. Yeah. Triangles. This is so much better and stable than this.
Yes. Well, and the triangles as well being applied to that because Rocky's species is a pentapod. Mm-hmm. He's able to manipulate things with 2 legs while standing on 3.
You can
always grab stuff,
Spider-Man the crap out of things,
and be able to manipulate with his hands, right?
Mm-hmm. Which makes him a great engineer.
Yeah, and I loved the idea of senses, right? On different planets, different situations and environments will lead to different things, and I love the idea of a species adapting to its environment in that way. That his home planet has no light at the surface.
So why would you develop a sense to see light?
Yeah, there's no point in developing radiation detecting, but a super thick atmosphere allows for very, very vibrant sound.
Sound would travel like as well as it does through water.
Right.
So how do whales and other cetaceans and whatnot communicate over long distances?
Well, and how do they
Sonar.
hunt? Right.
You can hunt sperm whales.
Yeah.
They're like sperm whales
In pitch black.
hunting hundreds of meters down. There is
No
virtually no light. Like,
Well,
here's a photon. There's like, by our senses, there's zero light.
Oh yeah, well as soon as you get to like 700 meters down, there's nothing. So a sperm whale, but it doesn't have to see.
It can see. It has sonar.
Yeah, well, and what's crazy is that it's developed both senses, right? Sight and sonar.
It needs both.
Yes.
Because it lives in both places. It has to come up for air, so being able to see is beneficial.
Right, but it's also extremely important that it's able to detect things in pitch black.
Have you ever seen a whale or a dolphin brain?
Oh yeah.
They're
super weird.
They're really weird. They look like two giant brains. There's reasons behind this, and part of it is when whales and other cetaceans sleep. It's a really bad idea to turn off your entire brain when you need to breathe.
Yeah, exactly. You live in water.
And you live in water. That's a bad combo. So half their brain will be off. Going into REM sleep, if you were to hook up an EEG up to one side of their brain, it will give off sleeping brain waves, and the other one will be giving off I'm awake things, and then it switches. And I have always wondered, does a dolphin dream while it's awake? And I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's.
But it's going through the same things, and most mammals I can think of dream.
Well, we have to dream.
I know. Yeah. Oh, that's a whole thing.
Yeah, and
that's another podcast.
yeah, but I love the idea of the species, of rocky species, developing these senses, but also the language and the culture behind that, and how their environment has shaped their culture, shaped their sleeping habits, right? Shaped just their behavior with one another. It's really fascinating.
So the Iridiums, as they're called in the story.
The Iridians.
Yeah, is that what I said?
Iridiums. You
I
said
used
the
the
name
U.
of the element.
No.
Yeah, you're good, dude.
Anyway, the space spiders.
Yes.
That are made of rocks and are steam powered.
Yeah.
They're freaking steam powered. Live in this environment where like it would be super dangerous, and
for us,
and like in their environments, evolving would be dangerous for them. And when they sleep, because of their biology, they're basic. Like if I'm sleeping and my kid starts crying or something, I'm awake.
Yeah, you're able to function.
I'm able to function. I'm helping, whatever it is. I have to pee. I wake up. I hope.
Right.
But they can't. They're completely shut down. But I don't remember how he explains it. But they completely shut down. And so because their biology makes them shut down completely when they're asleep, it's like they're in a coma.
Yeah, they're immobilized, and because they're. I'm trying to remember. They have to do something with the blood, right? Like
I think so, but I can't remember.
I don't remember the details. But yeah, for intents and purposes, their biology has dictated that they cannot move, they cannot function for long periods of time, and they don't know how long it's going to be. They can't plan it out.
It'll be between now, and they don't know what it's going to be. You can't set an alarm clock.
Right.
It would be very, very hard to do early morning school.
Yeah.
Just an absolute nightmare.
And so this.
Of course, they wouldn't have morning.
Right. They don't have, which is
okay,
crazy.
maybe they would, because the temperature might be different. Oh, man.
Down at the surface, when you've got so much atmosphere.
It's going to be really, really.
Similar to Venus. Even though Venus rotates very, very slowly, its temperature is surprisingly uniform across the whole surface. Even though one side of the planet doesn't see the sun for 90 plus Earth days, doesn't really get that much cooler.
Is that one of the reasons why the winds on Venus are so crazy?
Yeah.
Because and the winds on like Uranus and Neptune are the same way. Like I want to say the winds on Uranus are like Mach 3 or some insane number.
So Neptune has winds that reach 1,100 kilometers an hour.
Yeah.
And the what's really crazy is that these are two different reasons why they have wind. Neptune, the gas giants have these storms really because of the internal heat and rotation.
Yeah, the weight of them is they've got the heat coming from the inside of the planet, which is radiating up and creating currents this way.
Because that far out, the sun doesn't really make
it's
a big
nothing.
difference. It's like a glorified star at that point.
Yeah.
But for Venus, because it just sits under the sun, you've got this constant outward radial wind pattern that goes directly from the equator or the celestial equator, right?
Yeah.
And I think that Rocky's planet would experience a similar situation because of how thick that atmosphere is. The distribution of heat would be relatively uniform. So
And that makes sense.
So they might have a small differentiation in temperature depending on if they're facing the star or not. But I think that he mentioned
Their atmosphere is made of largely ammonia,
yeah.
and it's about 26 or 29 times the
Atmospheric
pressure at sea level for Earth, which is like being a few
kilometers down.
Yeah, it was like a few hundred meters below the surface.
Yeah, in water.
It's like being at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, and so this obviously the biology is completely different in comparison to our biology. But I think that his species, the Iridians, just have a huge amount of obviously Andy Weir. You're good.
Make sure things working properly. Okay, cool.
Obviously, Andy Weir put a lot of thought into how a species would evolve on a planet that is similar, right? It's rocky, it's got an atmosphere, but there's so many variables on planetary science.
Yeah.
The gravity is stronger on Rocky's planet. Obviously, the atmosphere is thicker. The atmosphere composition is completely different. And so to is that going to affect their evolution? And I love how detailed he goes.
Yeah. Every time, that was cool. Every time I'm like, here's an issue.
Yeah.
Generally within, and I'm like, I need to know the answer to this question right now because it seems like a problem that I've just thought of. Generally within a few pages of that issue would be addressed. And if it wasn't addressed then, it was generally addressed when it made more sense to make that an issue with, like, the way that astrophage holds energy.
Right. It's kind of a mystery.
Which is...
I mean...
that's the science fiction part of the science fiction.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things, right? There's a couple of things. Xenonite is the other, right? I literally, when I was reading this book, I read that it was made out of xenon, this metallic thing. I was like, wait a second. Like, no, that can't happen. And Ryland Grace had the same reaction. That's what I love about it. Like, he keeps on scanning it with his hand.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
But then you showed me right before we did this, the periodic table, and that there is electronegativity. Electronegativity words.
Yeah.
Within that, and what was it, krypton?
Yeah, so, which is strange because they're noble gases.
Yeah, which I would think they would have none of that.
But it appears, at least, I mean, I'm a high school chemistry teacher, which means that I understand.
Ryland Grace is junior high chemistry science teacher. He's on a mission to save the entire world from space bacteria.
Which maybe is part of the
reason totally you.
Why we love him so much is we really see ourselves in him.
I'm reading this like, this is exactly you.
Yeah, and it really is. There were a lot of moments like, man, I really feel this guy
like
on an emotional level.
When he's teaching his class and he's throwing around things trying to get the kids, like, bragging the kids to be excited.
Yeah.
And he also has the kid who, like, he's trying to get everybody else in the class involved, and the other guy's like, yeah. And you're like, I gotta let this kid think.
Right. Yeah.
I feel you on a spiritual level.
I did feel that way in a lot of the book. But that it's, what were we talking about? Oh, Xenonite. Welcome to my class, right? Xenonite is fascinating, but maybe not completely off of the realm of possibility, because these noble gases do exhibit some electronegativity, which means that they do want to exchange some electrons. Xenon could behave similarly to a metal.
I wonder, I mean, Andy Weir does his data research. He knows when he's wrong, because that's the way the story's gonna happen.
Yes, and there's obviously a couple of things.
And there's a few things, but like, it is impressive to me. I've read and watched a lot of sci-fi in my life.
Yeah, me too.
And a lot of sci-fi, you get into the thing, and then there's the
right, and I have shown this to my classes before. If the sci-fi is mostly, as you could describe it, it's mostly just kind of fudged, it loses me, right? Yeah. But if it's just maybe one or two things that is, okay, I don't know about that.
It's gonna be, I mean, it's sci-fi, science fiction shit. It's gotta have something in there that's like,
Right, but I've always been like, more heavily, it needs to be science fiction, or in the case of like Star Wars, it can be just like science fiction, right?
Yeah.
Where they don't even try to be scientific.
What are your thoughts on a book like The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? I'm assuming you have.
Yes, I have. I think
you're nerdy enough that I can assume that.
I think that Hitchhikers, again, it doesn't take itself seriously.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I think it's this perfect combination of like light science fiction.
Yes.
With British satire.
Right. Well, and that because they don't take themselves seriously. What I can't stand is science fiction where they take themselves seriously, and then it's just completely off to left field. Right. There's nothing scientifically accurate about it. So. Yeah, stuff like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Doctor Who, that kind of stuff. It's like, I mean, I'll just say, it's
Doctor Who is so like almost kind of a little bit sci-fi.
Oh, it's
not a freaking magic wand. He's a space wizard.
Right. Yeah, and again, it's just like Star Wars, right? The Force and
the Force is magic.
Sound in space with the sonic charges in Episode 2, like. Doesn't make me mad a little bit, but I think that when Andy Weir writes a book and it is just the science is just so good, and he uses the science to drive the plot.
When I can take the science of the thing and be like, okay, let's go deep. I did 3 or 4 hours of math.
Yes, and you said
but the hardest math that I could figure out how to do without having to do like real calculus. And then when I ran into things that was calculus, like, here, fancy computer bot, do this for me so I can see what the heck it means. Because I'm trying to figure out relativistic acceleration equations. And relativistic, like, mass isn't that big of a deal, but like, as it's increased on the curve, oh god. When you're trying to figure out how much energy you need, how much rocket fuel you need in order to get to a place, and you keep putting more rocket fuel on it, which makes it so you need more rocket fuel.
The rocket equation,
you're trying to do that with a mythological laser farts.
Yes.
Like, I need a fancy thing to do the calculus for me. So I sat down, I did math for as long as my brain would let me do it. I had around me on my couch just scraps of paper with an idea, an equation, and like, do these match up? And I'm trying to figure out the density of this and this, and I'm like, it's the energy right here. How does this compare the weight of this guy to the size and mass and density of red blood cells and like amoebas, and those actually check out. And so like when I can take when my brain goes, I got to figure out how accurate this is, because one, I feel like I can care, because if I like a lot of things, I look into it. It's like the Wizard of Oz, and you take it, and you're like, oh, that sounds fun. But when I can do that and go that deep into it, and like I start getting pretty nitpicky about things, that's
when it lines up,
good hardcore sci-fi.
And when it lines up, and even just
it lines up to like the micron with the size of things.
Well,
that was really cool.
Well, what's cool about Weir is that he takes the science really seriously, but not all the scientific principles have to be super advanced, right? So even the idea of how they breed the Talmiba, right?
They do it with solar thermal.
Right. Not the
breeding. The thing
Talmiba. Yeah. So the Talmiba being the natural predator of
spoilers.
Asteroid. Yes.
Spoilers.
Right. Well, if you're still watching.
Good job.
Just read the book. Read the book. Wait for the movie, maybe. Anyway.
Don't wait for the movie. Read the book.
Okay, do both.
The movie could be great or horrible.
We'll see.
Depends on how they do Rocky.
I'm confident. Well, that's true. Anyway, but just the idea of artificial selection it's not a crazy advanced scientific principle.
No, we've been doing it since the beginning of agriculture.
Forever, right? Oh, this melon has fewer seeds than that melon, so I want to make...
Humans have been doing genetic engineering since before we figured out we could take this... When we had these things next to each other, it made a thing that we liked.
Yeah, well, and I just love that, but that he explains it in a way where you can tell that Grace is a real scientist because of how he's set up his experiment with the multiple containment things, and then lo and behold, he
regular scientists or something that you did not think of.
Yeah, right. That he wasn't just breeding the Talmiba to be more resistant to nitrogen, or it was nitrogen, right?
It was more resistant to nitrogen because nitrogen is what kills it.
Was it nitrogen? Yeah.
It's nitrogen.
Yeah.
Because they had lots of it for a reason.
Right. But
also why it doesn't Talmiba would have a hard time. Like it would not be able to exist on Earth as it is right now because Earth's atmosphere is like 70-ish%, 70-something percent. Nitrogen.
Yeah, and so being able to breed that into a resistance phase, right, a resistant state, but also you get those. Just like breeding Great Danes for being big, you get these undesirable traits at the same time.
Breeding a bulldog in order to take a bull down because it's got it with its flat face makes it so it is really hard for that poor dog
to breed, right? And
those poor dogs.
Right. So there's consequences, and I just the aspects, the breadth of science that is covered in his stuff. Have you read Artemis, his second book?
I haven't read Artemis.
People didn't really love it. I liked it. I didn't love it. But Project Hail Mary,
it was
The Martian.
It was fantastic. The Martian was really good. The Martian was a different type of sci-fi. There was
yeah, but you got an astronaut by himself.
It
was really snarky.
Good point. Andy Weir, on a completely unrelated but kind of related note, he writes like me a little bit. I write about 3 things. I write about stupid people who think they're smarter than they are, and that ends up comedy. I write about death. And I write about science.
The Offspring only make one kind of song, and that
That's
doesn't
okay.
mean
I've been listening to Offspring songs for
right?
30.
So he's got a genre.
27 years. 27
The Offspring. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been listening to Offspring for 27 years.
So just because he's got a style doesn't mean we love him any less. But while you say that it is a different kind of sci-fi, yes,
I'm going to say it's different in where it goes with science. There is more speculative stuff in.
Oh yeah.
There's so much more speculative stuff.
Oh yeah.
Project Hail Mary.
Oh yeah.
Well, with The Martian, the very first thought that came to my mind before I read or watched or anything of it, when I heard that he grew potatoes on Mars, was how did he get the bacteria to grow things? Because I grew up as a farmer, and you need nitrogen, and you need other things. You don't just need the things in there. You need to be broken up, and the way that works is with bacteria. There's a symbiotic relationship between funguses and bacteria and decomposers in not just breaking things down, but making it so something is edible for a potato. And the potato has evolved in order to be with these things. And without them, in completely dead soil, even if it has nutrients in it, a potato ain't gonna grow.
Right.
If you take soil and you irradiate it and you try to grow potatoes in it, you're gonna screw the potatoes up.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the very first thing I thought. And then when I'm going through that, he does exactly what I was like, he's going to have to do this. He uses his poos to do that. And I don't remember if they mentioned in the movie, but I think in the book they talk about the bacterial part of that.
Yeah, well,
because he's using his gut with that bacteria.
They go into in the book. Weir goes into a lot more detail about everything, right? Than in the movie. And I'm gonna guess that the movie adaptation of Project Hail Mary will be similar. But you're right in that Project Hail Mary is more speculative, right? But it is based on sound scientific.
Yeah, the sound scientific principles, 95% of the time or more are super duper sound and.
Well,
stand up to my pedantic mind doing dumb math for hours on end.
I think that he made a safe prediction with the Iridians in that they're crabs because of the
everything's a crab.
The huge tendency for nature to make crabs.
Crabs, and we all know this because we have seen the internet.
Right. Independently,
things that look like crabs have evolved so
like
many
6 or 7 times independently.
Crabs or lobster or shrimp or scorpions.
Yeah.
What are they called?
Well,
the giant spiders.
Mites.
Mites. Yeah, I always thought mites were like just a crab, but they're not a crab. They're
like spiders.
They're in the same family as the spiders.
They're really strange.
Ticks.
Yeah. So like I think that was a safe bet. So like while it is more speculative, it isn't unbelievable, and it's so well thought out. And I know I've said that many times.
It's realistic. It holds up to anything that's going to be working with speculative biology.
Right.
Even speculative biology on Earth is a thing. Like I remember there was a show on Discovery like 20 years ago, and it was like future Earth.
Oh yeah.
And they speculated on like what will evolve in a million years. And I remember one of the things that they had were terrestrial octopods, and they were arboreal, and I couldn't decide if I thought that was brilliant or the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I didn't. It's one of those things where like. Yeah, I can make an argument for both things. I mean, octopods make a lot of sense from like the octopods make so much sense. And squids, they're smart.
Yep.
They can manipulate things.
They've got
which you would
a
probably
decentralized nervous system.
Oh my gosh, octopus brains.
And so it's just, I think that speculative biology is always going to be a little bit out there. However,
it makes sense to me. When he came out and he was a pentapod, when they start talking about the way in which he moves, like we have muscles because it makes sense on Earth. But if you were in something that had that much gravity and that much air pressure, you don't want a soft, squishy human type body. You're gonna die.
Yeah.
Especially if your atmosphere is made of ammonia.
Right. And your gravity is so high.
A meat sack like us is gonna die.
Well. A meat sack like us dies pretty much anywhere.
That's true.
Even
we die in most places on Earth.
Yeah, exactly.
They're very, very... And not just like underneath the water. I go to a place that's slightly too cold or slightly too hot. Yeah. My body's like, I give up.
When people are like, oh, you're going to go live on Mars? Like, you can't live there. Well, you can't live here either, okay? You want to live in Ogden, Utah in the middle of the winter?
We got to take some of us with some place where we... Yeah, if I want to live in Ogden, Utah during the middle of winter, I gotta make.
You have to have technology. Right?
I have to make a place that's not outside.
Exactly. I have to make.
I gotta. Oh,
the place where I am less this.
Here is the thing that I don't know why this broke my brain, but he has a T-shirt. Rocky wears clothes.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And in sci-fi, unless an alien looks like a human with weird crap put on their face, they're always naked.
Yeah, right.
Chewbacca. No other civilization has invented clothing. The gray dudes who come and abduct us and probe us and make crop circles who were here during the 90s and the 50s that we autopsied hadn't invented clothes.
Yeah.
The aliens from Independence Day naked as, and they're like, it's not like the Xenomorphs.
No, they had an exosuit.
Honestly, yeah, they do. I always feel like
they got like battle armor.
They do have battle armor, but they're super gross and slimy underneath there. So those t-shirts aren't going to work
you're
for them.
super gross and slimy underneath there too. So, I mean,
this isn't my battle suit.
Well, it might as well be, right?
This is my thin protection against the elements.
This is me going out to face the dangers.
This was the best evolution
weather.
could think of to protect me from this world that wants me dead.
Right, and so that Rocky's species has invented clothing and just culture and
the way they
language.
speak is also musical.
Yeah, which I loved.
But they go with chords, and
which for you and me is another. It just hits us right where we live.
Yeah, our little music zones. Yeah. I'm going. Okay. This is the weirdest thing I've come across in a little while. There's a dude out there who has he's super color. He's like double colorblind. So he's the type of colorblind where you can only see black and white.
Okay.
So he's missing two types of the cones in his eyes.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah, that's right. And he has a sensor that he has had implanted into. He looks like he has an antenna. Like, imagine an anglerfish.
Right.
He's got this thing, and it's attached, like, right here to his skull. Mm-hmm. And it comes out here, and it's got a sensor on it. And the sensor detects colors. And he can hear...
Love it.
He can hear colors. And it's set up so different colors are different notes. And so a combination of colors creates a chord. Mm-hmm. And so when he listens to a thing, he hears the music of how something looks.
That's awesome. Well,
this is a real person.
Yeah.
That really exists.
Not science fiction.
This is not science fiction. This is very real.
Well, but with that, right, the fact that Ryland Grace, for a while I was like, I don't know if Ryland would be able to learn this. But then you start thinking about how we are programmed to be able to hear little nuances in people's voices, and how, people that have perfect pitch are obviously that's a
if we had Dr. Moran on the turn,
yeah,
and I said, what's this chord? And
he'd know.
And even if he doesn't, I could play two chords away from. I could play a C, and I could play like a C major, and then I could go up to like a G major or something like that.
Yeah.
And he could tell me what those were. He could tell me if it was a major chord or a minor chord. And it's because he's just learned those things. He's worked on that, and he's listened to it enough that he can hear the difference. It's not any different than me knowing the difference in the sound of the alphabet, or if I have a click language where the sounds make difference, or if I speaking a Polynesian language where we have way fewer consonants, but way more vowels.
Right.
Or if you grow up in a language where you don't have an sound or an L sound, and then you have a hard time getting it here, but you consider sounds in the one that you learn. Mm-hmm. Humans are
very adaptable.
Really adaptable. Yeah. And since it's musical, I think that it would. For a second, I was like the same. I was like, would I be able to do that? And then I thought for a second, you know what? I don't have to think about it. And if something is playing, I'm not thinking about what key it's in, but I can know what notes or sounds it would be in.
Yeah. Well, just
because they fit, and because of the experiences that you have had.
And even just
so much
the first time hearing a song, right? You can make predictive.
You can predict where it's going to go
and where it's going to end, right? That you know kind of the flow of those sounds because we're just used to hearing.
And it's a skill that you learn. My wife doesn't play instruments, and she thinks I'm magic sometimes. When a song come on, never heard it before, and I can know how it's going to go. I will occasionally pick up a guitar and kind of like, I'm not good at it, but like I can kind of be like, okay, this is the pattern it's going to go. I'm like, we're going to go to a verse here. It's like, how do you know? It's like, I just worked with it a lot. Yeah,
and we're able to learn these things, and obviously hearing is a very important sense of ours. And I love as well the nuance of Rocky's language aside from the pitches and everything, the way that their culture emphasizes things with repeating multiple times, and the idea of
questions and with the word question.
Yeah, exactly. And that there's I love when a writer really builds a world and it doesn't just make assumptions that we know these things about these cultures, or that the culture is always the same amongst.
It's America,
right? But exactly, like
I love Star Trek more than a human should love Star Trek. But they have landed on Nazi planets. Like, there are episodes of Star Trek where the geology, they have the same freaking continents, and they happen to land in whatever is 1942 equivalent there.
Well, it's Rick and Morty makes a joke about that, right? Why is the default fascism, right? It's like, and
I mean, it happens over and over and over again. And if they're not like literal Nazis, there's the Cardassians, which are space Nazis. There's the Romulans, who are space Romans.
Right.
And like, part of Star Trek isn't, the aliens are analogs to aspects of humanity. That's part of the whole deal, and that's one of the things I love about it. But every so often, I'll watch an episode of Star Trek and I'll be like, come on.
Could we get some variety? Could we get a world that is truly expansive?
You do get that in the animated series of Star Trek from like the 70s.
I haven't seen that.
It's simultaneously awesome and horrible. Well, they're space hippogriffs.
Well, obviously animation gives you a much broader scope.
They had the budget to draw.
Right, as opposed to filming in live action. Yeah. But I would say, just to finish up, I would say that this is probably, Project Hail Mary is top 3 favorite books of all time for me. Just because of how wonderful the science is, how engaging the writing style is, but also the optimistic view of humanity, and this is what I always come back to. Like, I want to see where humanity goes. I want to see what we do in 10,000 years, in 100,000 years. And this one event of the astrophage affecting the sun really pushes us to develop our civilization much faster, and that we are able to come together. And I know that I joke that like that's not realistic, but that, that we could do it.
Someday.
Yeah.
In the future of humanity.
Yeah.
They're gonna be some.
Well, and we're seeing that now.
That's how. I mean, whether it is climate change or it is something I can't think of.
Existential threat, like an asteroid.
Some sort of existential threat, an asteroid. Aliens who are malevolent.
Less than
although that one always doesn't make any sense to me, but let's pretend that it does. Something. I want to hope that humans can continue. Humans are weird, naked monkeys. And a lot of times, I am very disappointed in us as a species because we're so smart, but we're so stupid.
Yeah, I agree.
And I want to hope that when push comes to shove, we can come together and we can be the smart monkeys that we are.
Yeah.
Because, I don't remember who said it, but it would be like the greatest tragedy if a species that could know what its doom is and be able to stop it
fails to do so
because they couldn't work together.
Yeah.
And I hope as humans we're better than that.
Well, and I think that when I talk about this stuff, and there's a lot of doom and gloom in the world right now, and I mean young people think that. I think I saw a poll that like 65 or 70% of people under the age of 18 are of the opinion that humanity is doomed, and it's scary. Like, there's a lot of scary things, but we are the most intelligent species in the universe as far as we know. And look at all the amazing things we have done. And what I love about this kind of sci-fi, and like with Star Trek and so forth, it presents us with a positive outlook on what we can accomplish.
Yeah.
And what's great about it is that it's not based in total fiction, because we can look back and see how far we've come.
Yeah. I mean, I look back to how far we've come as I was a history teacher before I was an English teacher, and while there's a lot of similarities, and I think humankind has certain things that we're just always going to have, as a species, we seem to, I hope, kind of improve as time goes on. We learn very slowly, but I think we learn from things. I think as a species, we're not as horrible as we used to be.
Maybe
that's a bad word.
We learn slowly on a life.
I feel like we learn. I think we
lifespan.
learn on a generational level.
Exactly. Every generation makes improvements on their society over the previous, and we can see that we've made so much progress. And I hope that in the future, when faced with an existential crisis like astrophage, that we're able to fix it.
All right. I think that's a good place to end it.
Yep. I think that's pretty good stuff.
This has been the Dinner and Geek Podcast.
Thing.
If it's a thing
Yeah,
later,
if it
cool.
becomes
If
a
it's
thing.
not, then cool. It was fun. I think the food's good.
Yep.
The Soylent was surprisingly tasty.
Yep.
Soylent Green, people.
This is not.
This is not.
See ya.